Hello, my name is Bill Simpson. I'm at my cabin in scenic and picaresque Russell Gulch, Colorado. This is the latest in a series of lectures on philosophy for my students at Metropolitan State University of Denver. So today I want to talk about how Descartes reaps the benefits, such as they are, of the ontological argument in Meditations 4 and 6. So let's summarize where we've been so far. In Meditations 1 or 2, Descartes introduces a systematic or global doubt about his own existence, about the existence of a world outside his own consciousness, and doubt about whether or not those contents of the external world might correspond or not correspond with the contents of his own mind. And we saw in Meditation 2 that the cogito argument, as Descartes puts it in the Discourse and Method, I think therefore I am, cogito ergo sum, hence the argument is called the cogito argument. A better way to put it would be how Descartes puts it in the Meditations. I'm experiencing a mental event, therefore I must exist in the moment in which such a mental event occurs. Okay, and so Descartes' existence falling out of the cogito is episodic. Descartes is not convinced about the existence of an external world, the veridicality of sense perception, or even in his own continued existence over time. So we bring in the ontological argument in Meditations 3 and 5, and the ontological argument goes something like this. By God we mean the supremely perfect being. Premise 1. Premise 2, it's a greater perfection to exist in reality than in the mind only. Hence, God must necessarily exist. Now, given those results, Descartes is able to dispose not only with the problem of solipsism, that is, he's convinced of his own existence but not yours, but also he's able to solve problems about veridicality of sense perception and whether or not his own inner mental contents are reliable, or whether the evil demon is entering into the picture and confusing Descartes even in his own thoughts. And so in Meditation 4, we dispatch the evil demon by appealing to God's nature as not being a deceiver. And so around page 54 in your marginal notes, Descartes says this. To begin with, I acknowledge that it is impossible for God ever to deceive me, for trickery or deception is always indicative of some imperfection. And remember, God is the supremely perfect being. And although the ability to deceive seems to be an indication of cleverness or power, the will to deceive undoubtedly attests to maliciousness or weakness. Accordingly, deception is incompatible with God. Next, I experience that there is in me a certain faculty of judgment, which, like everything else in me, I undoubtedly received from God. And since he does not wish to deceive me, he assuredly has not given me the sort of faculty which I could ever make a mistake when I use properly. So our mental faculties are a gift from God that, if we use them properly, allow us to get to the truth in our internal thinking. So much for the evil demon. But what about the external world corresponding to states of affairs in our own minds? Once again, we appeal to the ontological argument, God is not a deceiver. This is on page 80 in the marginal notes, or in the marginal notation, in Meditation 6. But since God is not a deceiver, okay, the common refrain, since God is not a deceiver, it is patently obvious, okay, we use the word patently again, it is patently obvious that he does not send me these ideas either immediately by himself or even through the mediation of some creature that contains the objective reality of these ideas, not formally but only eminently. For since God has given me no faculty whatsoever for making this determination, but instead has given me a great inclination to believe that these ideas issue from corporeal things, I fail to see how God could be understood not to be a deceiver if these ideas were to issue from some other source than corporeal things. God is not a deceiver. Hence, the contents of our minds, the contents of our perceptions correspond to bodily objects. An evil deceiver is not feeding me hallucinations one after another. And so let's take a look at how Descartes describes thirst in Meditation 6. This is around page 88, again in the marginal notes. When we need something to drink, a certain dryness arises in the throat that makes nerves in the throat, and by means of them, the inner parts of the brain affect the motion of the mind with the sensation of thirst. Okay, so that's a fairly complicated story, so let's go through it. I have a dryness in my throat that affects the nerves in my throat, that affect the brain, and the brain affects the mind resulting in sensation. So let me see if I can't draw the picture for you. Here's Descartes' body. It's accompanied by mental contents. There might be a physical event such as dryness in the throat, which corresponds to the sensation of thirst. And the two events resemble one another thanks to the agency of God. And we call this entire picture Cartesian mind-body dualism.